I want to thank everyone for joining us today for our Talking Tech, Talking Business, and Talking Budget webinar. We're excited about this discussion today. We will help bridge the communication gap between IT professionals and business leaders, along with explaining complex technical concepts in a very clear, very relatable terminology. Also, we'll be aligning IT priorities with business goals, and we'll approach budgeting discussions with a shared understanding. My name is Chris Nation. I'm the marketing manager here at Mirazon. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. I want to let you know we will have opportunities at the end of the webinar for discussion and addressing any questions you may have. Feel free to add those into the chat, and we'd be happy to address those as we move along. Also, this webinar will be recorded and placed on YouTube, so if you know someone that would benefit from hearing this information, please feel free to share that with them. And if they have questions, we'd be happy to address them as well. So with that, I'm excited to officially kick things off and introduce our speaker. So Brent Earls is the Chief Technology Officer here at Mirazon. He's been an IT consultant for 18 years, and he holds numerous industry credentials and certifications. Brent works with companies ranging from company size of one person all the way to publicly traded international businesses. And those companies have really diverse experiences with various technologies and business requirements. Brent helps businesses think strategically about their technology, budgeting, and overall business goals. So we're really excited to hear what Brent has to say in these areas today. With that, Brent, I'm going to turn things over to you to get us started with the discussion.
Okay. So this is going to be a complex presentation because there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So we're going to bounce back and forth between what business leaders and what IT leaders are talking about and how they're communicating with each other. We're going to talk about the problem. We're going to talk about what IT cares about, what business cares about, framing the IT issues for business leaders to understand, framing IT issues for business leaders, and then the same the other way. And we're going to end talking about some budgeting stuff and how to make that work. So let's jump right into it. IT is one of the most acronymed industries that exists. If you work in IT very much, you know that everything that's being said is pretty much going to be some type of acronym. So even simple things basically end up becoming acronyms to where sentences are more acronym than words in some situations. IT is also increasingly complicated even for simple environments. What used to would have been some very simple basic environments where IT was a very small portion of the effort, even those have gotten much more complicated as things have evolved over the years. IT is expensive. It is an expense for most companies, and it takes a lot of money. It's not cheap to do IT. It's also directly involved in the business more than ever, even if that's unintentional. Even if that's as simple as 20 years ago, we didn't use email for business orders, but now customers are reaching out to us all the time to buy stuff via email, and we're doing it. So if email's down, it's a problem. But for a lot of companies, it's way more complicated than that. Oh, well, as opposed to salespeople literally going out and knocking on doors, now we've got all these lists we're working towards, and we're specifically targeting verticals, and we're doing all this stuff. So IT is just more involved in everything. And because of that, IT outages directly and negatively impact the business. If there is an outage in IT, it causes direct issues that are severe for a lot of companies. So that means that de-risking, aka removing risks from IT, is more complicated and expensive than it used to be. It used to be we had a server. That server did some basic things for our company, mostly file shares to store stuff, but we still had our paper copies. And de-risking basically meant we take a backup and put it on a tape drive once every week. And that's good enough because the servers, if it goes out, well, we'll have to go back to paper, but it's not that big of a deal. So IT isn't like that anymore. If you lose 2 hours of data, it's like, oh God, that just cost us $20,000 to lose those 2 hours of data. This is awful. The world's ending. So there's more and more de-risking involved, and that makes things more complicated and expensive. Translating business needs to IT solutions is hard for IT people. We're going to talk about this in some more depth later, but just getting the business needs this and trying to figure out how to make that work in IT isn't an easy thing. And then custom software exponentially increases every problem in the business. Unless you're a big company, doing anything custom is expensive and will, without question, cause you a lot of pain down the line. But it's what direction a lot of people go when they're trying to fix specific problems. So now that we've talked about the problem, what IT should care about? Well, security. This is the one that everybody's talking about right now. Don't let bad people in. Don't let good people do bad things. So bad people in, of course, is somebody from a foreign country trying to get into your business and steal all your money. Good people doing bad things is preventing the receptionist from clicking on an email that they think is legit from the CEO that isn't. Uptime, just keeping the systems on day to day. Not ever taking Windows during the middle of the day, making sure the servers stay up, and everything's just always online. Business continuity, disaster recovery. So if something really bad happens, like somebody does click that bad email or a tornado comes through, things are still online. Supportability. So if Microsoft finds a major problem with Windows, we need to be on a version where we get support. If you've recently been hearing about all the Windows 10 ESU stuff, that's an example. Similar with servers, same thing with hardware. We need to keep everything supportable by the vendor. So there's this constant cycle of updating stuff and replacing stuff. And all of the above, again, goes back to de-risking. And this is one of the key things in IT. Because it's become so important, most IT departments spend almost all of their time just trying to de-risk things and stop bad things from happening. So the security, stop bad things from happening, make sure the business stays up. Uptime, make sure the business stays up. Business continuity, make sure the business stays up. Supportability, make sure the business stays up if something bad happens. So that's most of what IT has really become for a lot of organizations. But the other thing IT works on is business enablement. This is helping the business do what it needs to do. But as IT's gotten more complicated and there's all these extra things that are causing risks to the business enablement often doesn't get addressed as much as it should. And that's a very, very important thing that IT needs to make sure they're following through. So what do business leaders care about? We've talked about IT a lot, but what do the business leaders themselves care about? Well, revenue. This is also going to be a really quick crash course in business economics. Revenue is the money coming in the door. So this is how much you're getting from your customers. Everyone has customers of some type for whatever you're providing. So for example, we have revenue of $10,000. Cool. COGS. COGS are the costs of those goods to make those products. So if we here at Cogsworth Cogs are making our sprockets, and those sprockets we're selling for $10,000, it might cost us $7,000 to make them. So that's basically just how much it actually costs. So that's the CNC time. That's the people running the CNC. That's the metal coming in that we're making those cogs out of. Gross margin is just the money left over from revenue after the cogs come out. So in this case, revenue 10,000, 7,000 in cogs, gross margin 3,000. So that's basically once we've actually made the product for the customer, what it costs. And there is a product, there is a customer. If you're a service organization, the product is the time that you're selling to people for your time, like us. If you are a nonprofit, you're still doing all this. It just is framed in a different way. You're getting donations for stuff. You're getting grants. You're getting all that. That's your money coming in. You're then doing things with that to help people. Those are your cogs, and your gross margins, what's left over after that to cover expenses. Expenses are things that aren't directly associated with making the customer product. So if we're making cogs over here at Cogsworth Cogs, then we have expenses. We have a sales department. They're the people who are bringing it, who are going and finding new customers. We have marketing. They're the people who are getting our name out there so that everybody knows who we are. If we don't do any of that, we can keep selling the same gears to the same people, but we can't really grow the company very much. But those expenses cost money. And IT also falls in here. For most every organization, IT is an expense. It's not directly involved with making the product. Instead, it just costs the company money. And so in this case, you end up with your net income. So net income, a lot of people are like, business people, they're always greedy. They just focus on nothing but the money. But net income is what actually pays for things to improve the business. So if we're in this situation, well, the person who owns the company doesn't get paid until we get down into this net income section. They don't get anything before then. So that's kind of noteworthy. And also, if we want to buy something big, which we'll talk about in a minute, like say a new server, essentially that's coming out of the net income. That's coming out of the bottom line. It's a capital expense. We'll talk about that in a second. But that's why business leaders are always focused on the money, is because in the end, they've got to balance all these things to make the company profitable, which is why they're always focused on things like efficiency, lowering the cost to make things, lowering expenses so that all this increases so that they can grow the company. Let's say you want to go on a big marketing spree and spend a bunch of marketing money to increase how many customers you have. Well, that's going to increase expenses, which means gross margin has to increase or net income goes away, which means the owners don't get paid. You can't buy any new fancy stuff. It's not great. So business leaders are normally focused on efficiency. Market differentiators is another thing. So how they separate themselves from the past. So how is Cogsworth Cogs different from Spacely Sprockets? What makes them unique? What about their gears is different than everyone else's? And then business enablement, helping the business do what it needs to do. So you'll note we have our first crossover between what the business and what IT does, which is helping the business do what it needs to do. So that's where we really have our bridge that connects IT and business. We need to be focusing all of our conversations around what it's actually doing for the business to help the business. Here's how to frame it with the business leaders. That's how to frame it with IT. How is it actually enabling things? So if you're in IT, how do you frame IT projects for business leaders? Well, a lot of that is focusing on IT as a business enabler. So you should be talking to other department managers, figuring out what marketing's having problems with that IT may be able to help with to improve public notoriety and vision. Could be something as simple as you just got started with marketing and they don't even have us tagged in Google Maps or something. That's something simple you could help with. It's not really a big thing, but it's something you could help with. Sales, how to make it easier and faster to get customers to buy. So a lot of this might come back to your CRM that's actually talking to customers. Is there anything you can do to make that better? Implement that in the first place. Upgrade it to new versions, things like that to improve. Admin and HR, automating repetitive tasks. This is really where you've seen a whole lot with AI come in, is getting rid of some of those repetitive tasks. Admin and HR are doing the exact same things all the time. We're always getting these requests for what are our benefits? What is our vacation schedule this year? What are our holidays? If we could get something just automatically answered that, like a chatbot, that would be huge to take load off of HR and admin. Operations, IT streamlining product creation. So we're making our gears over here at Cogsworth. What can IT do to improve the speed and efficiency with which we make those gears so that we make more of them and can make more money? And then how do your IT necessities help the business? So there's a lot of things that IT does, as I mentioned, that are de-risking. So like high availability, BCDR, figuring out ways to talk through that so that de-risking is important, but it's not always the answer. In so many companies, IT just always comes back with, we need to do this so that a bad thing doesn't happen. We need to upgrade our hardware so that it doesn't fail. We need to get more security so that the people don't get into our systems. We need to upgrade Windows because it's going end of life and bad things may happen. That's important, but when that's the only thing you take to business all the time, it really becomes, it starts to sound like IT is just an insurance company. I'm spending $100,000 a year on this, and the only thing they're doing is basically selling me insurance. We're doing this so that something bad doesn't happen. You're spending all this money so that something bad doesn't happen. Well, in that case, maybe I just up my insurance policy and say, screw IT and don't spend any money on it. So that's why it's important to frame your projects in IT in a way that makes them more business oriented. So does the IT expense facilitate helping the business? So does it bring in more gross margin? You can do that either by increasing revenue or making fewer COGS. So an example for that, we're implementing the new version of our ERP. This new version of the ERP looks at our orders that are outstanding and batches like orders together so that our factory line makes the same COG for the whole day instead of making it for part of the day, changing over to make a different part, changing over back to make the original part, all of that. This new version makes that much more streamlined so that we lose less time, which is money, in making our products, which helps our gross margin. Greater net income. Okay, we're moving to the cloud version of our ERP. By doing that, we're eliminating some of our on-prem expenses. We're cutting out this, and this. That means that we have to spend less on all that ongoing. So that's going to increase our net income. If you can both make your ERP more efficient by moving it to the cloud so that it speeds up the production line and also costs less somehow, then you really impact net income and really make it easier for the business leaders to understand what benefit you're bringing to them. Then there's issues. We all have issues in IT. Things come up, things blow up, things that are not great happen. So framing how you're going to explain these businesses also helps build bridges with the company. So for example, we could say that our web hosting provider manages our DNS. They were updating the A record for our website, and when they did, they noticed these weird SPF DMARC DKIM records they didn't understand. They didn't look like valid records. They deleted them. Once they deleted them, the spam filters that validate us with those records started blacklisting us, and so we weren't allowed to receive any email. So that was about 50% acronyms and TLAs and jargon that most people wouldn't follow. On the other hand, you could say the web developer was updating our public identifiers, during which they erroneously deleted the ones that validate we are who we are for email. That's, in the end, that's the same thing. If you're in IT, you know that's the SPF DMARC DKIM records that were deleted out of DNS, but the business leader doesn't need to know those specifics most of the time. Make it simple so they can understand it. Make the complicated issue, like I just went into, simpler. Give them a summary without all the nuance. If they want more detail, maybe you have a savvy person in the business that IT reports to. Give them more detail afterwards, but give them all the information, but simplified if you can. But always have a solution and next step for how you're going to fix that issue moving forward. Hey, we already put the records back in. We already got the web hosting provider put the records back in. Moving forward, we're taking over our public identifiers so that there can't be this mistake again, because we know how these work and we don't want this issue to happen again. Next steps, next action. For them, it's like, okay, there was an issue, but they've already thought it through. They've already figured out the next steps. Don't have to worry about this moving forward, aside from, did you do the thing? But the most important thing is, don't talk down to people. Just because they're not smart in the way you're smart doesn't mean they're dumb. Just because they don't have your entire dictionary thesaurus of IT terms doesn't mean they aren't smart people who understand concepts. So don't dumb it down to like 5-year-old where it's like, well, you see the blinky light stop blinking and that made things go boom. Make sure you're explaining the actual issue with real terms where necessary, but you're simplifying it because they don't need to know all the details most of the time, but they need to know the right thing that went wrong as opposed to just, well, something blew up today and we fixed it. Yeah, that doesn't help anything. So treat them intelligently. Just try to simplify your messaging and remove a lot of the jargon. Use analogies if you need to make things a little easier. Business side, you can also help. This isn't a one-way street. So when business projects come up, focusing on how IT may be able to help makes it so much easier. So right now, of course, the big thing is AI. Companies all over the place. We want AI. We want AI. We want AI. If you go to IT and say, we want AI, they're going to go, what? What do you want AI to do? Because AI is just a general technology term. It doesn't mean anything. A lot of companies right now have told IT, we want AI. So IT went out and bought a ChatGPT enterprise license for a bunch of employees and said, now you have AI. Hope it does whatever you wanted it to do. That's not beneficial to either side. Now IT has all these extra expenses of this ChatGPT enterprise. If there isn't a specific way that it's supposed to be used to help people, it's largely going to sit there unused, except for reading your emails for you and then writing the responses to those emails so the email becomes completely useless. So a better way to phrase that would be like, hey, can AI help us in HR to take care of this issue where employees are just constantly asking us what holidays we get this year? And somebody has to manually write the response every time. Go read the damn handbook. Or, well, we get this day, since Christmas falls on a Thursday, we get the Friday after it, and blah, blah, blah. Could we make a chatbot that fixes that or something that like automates that or something? That is a topic where IT can then go, okay, I know what they're trying to get to. What all do I need to find and put together to make that work? And then IT can actually focus on it. Versus generically, we want IT, well, or we want AI. IT might not know which direction you want it and go somewhere. If you can frame a specific problem you're trying to fix, then IT can work towards it. If the goal is efficiency, help identify what part of the task isn't efficient. So we're running a factory, making our cogs. Getting the CNC files from the engineers to the CNCs is 18 steps. The engineer makes the file. They put it on the file server. They check it in. Then the CNC operator walks across the room, sits down at a computer, pulls it from the file server down to his local computer, does all the G code, checks his tool pathing, does all this, puts it on a flash drive, walks it over, plugs it in. Is there anything you can do to make that workflow easier? Because again, if you frame it as a specific problem, then IT can focus in on trying to fix it. IT isn't a generic business consultant in most cases. They don't know how all the parts of the business work, but if you give them something, they can work with somebody to figure out the tasks involved to narrow it down to something that is an IT issue that can be fixed. Like, oh, well, if we get the CNCs on the network, then somebody doesn't have to go over there and do all this stuff. They can operate right from the CNC and get this stuff going. Or generic things, IT comes and says, we want to be able to survive the business. We want to be able to survive this building burning down. Okay, well, that just started about 18 hours of conversations about what level of survivability and what if only part of the building burns down and how quickly and how much data can we lose and everything else. It becomes a huge nebulous thing that pretty much never gets fixed. Focus on the specifics of how things aren't working if you have issues. So a lot of times business people put in tickets to IT and it's like, hey, things aren't great. But if you can say specifics of how they're not great, like it used to be that when we scanned a barcode on the hand scanner, it would pretty much instantaneously go to the next screen. But for now, it sits for like a minute after we've scanned, but before it shows the results of that scan. Versus picking parts is slow now. Well, picking parts is slow doesn't tell us anything about what we're trying to focus on. But if you can just take that extra minute to add extra detail around, hey, this is where it's slow, then IT can focus in and be like, oh, the database is slow because once it scans it, it talks to the database, it pulls the information back to the hand scanner. For some reason, the database isn't responding. We can focus in on the issue. So it makes it a lot easier for IT to actually help the business with their problem versus just cycle around forever. The absolute bane of every IT person in the world existence is everything's slow. Everything is slow basically means absolutely nothing. And all that's going to happen is IT is going to come back to you and be like, okay, what are you doing that's slow? Show me specific examples of what's slow. Oh, it's not slow anymore. Cool. What was slow? What do you mean everything? Well, what were you trying to do? You don't remember. Okay, I'm going to close this ticket. Open it again if something's wrong. If you can say, when we scan a barcode, it's slow to go to the next, IT might just be able to instantly go, yeah, we're having an issue with the database. We're already working on it. I'm sorry, we hope to have this fixed within 15 minutes. Versus your ticket will just get in the queue and then they'll come back 3 hours later after you're angry that no one's responded and be like, oh, you were doing, oh, yeah, that's fixed now. So where IT and the business talk most often usually comes around money. And the way that money happens in businesses is very different company to company in a lot of ways. But there's a few concepts you need to understand to kind of wrap your head around how budgeting needs to happen. Most companies focus on spending their money one of two ways. Operating expenses, these are like subscriptions almost. The money is spent constantly in small increments. So, for example, in IT terms, a SaaS app, something that's as a service, a cloud app, things like that. Those are operating expenses. A business example would be a forklift rental. Well, we use a forklift like once a month at most for a day or half a day. We rent a forklift. We don't want to spend the money on a forklift, so we rent one. So that's an operating expense. Done. Capital expenses are big expenses. So we're going to go buy that forklift. We don't use it once a month anymore. We use it every single day now that we got new racks. So we need to buy a forklift. So these expenses are often put on the books once and then depreciated over time, which means they hold their value. So an operating expense has no intrinsic value to the company, but that forklift is still worth money after it's bought. So it's depreciated over time. Same thing with a new SAN or a new server. It's bought now, it's a very big expense, but then it's still worth something in a year, so it's depreciated. The way your business works as far as capital or operating changes. Honestly, it's different parts of the business's cycle. It also changes based on how they want the books to look. So understanding what your company wants for expenses is very important. If your company says, we want everything to be an operating expense, we're okay if that costs more in the end, but we want to get everything to where at any point we can stop it because we might be selling off this division over here. So we don't want to tie up any capital, any long-term expenses. We want something we can get in and get out of. Okay, I need to be looking at as a service solutions. Or capital, hey, we had a bumper year. We're sitting on a crap load of money right now, but they're going to tax the crap out of us if we keep this money. We want to spend it on the business now. So let's buy some IT stuff because I know your stuff's expensive, even though I don't understand it. With that, you also go back to your fiscal year. So this is how your business actually runs their books. Most people assume that January 1 to December 31st is how accounting works and that it follows the calendar because why would it not? As for why it would not, it's stupid, but it doesn't always. Like schools, a school year is considered, August through May. So a lot of times school books are July 1 to June 30. So it isn't following the calendar year, it's following the actual school year. The federal government is October 1st to September 30th. You may have noticed something happened on October 1st this year. And that's because that's when new fiscal year started. This tracks all the way back to when all the people in Congress were farmers and they went home for the summer and fall to plant and harvest their crops. And so that seemed like a good time to terminate the government and start over when everybody came back for the winter session. But your business might have a different one. So it's important to know this because your budget cycle is going to run through this, which means you need to know when things are going to be, when your budget needs to be in, because if it starts on January 1st, you need to have your budget to people and approved before then. If no one's talking to you about this, it probably means IT is considered just a blank bucket of expense and they're just throwing a number in for you. So try to get involved in that conversation so that it can be an intelligent number instead of just, we chucked 50 grand in there for you. Is that enough? It's like, no, we need to replace half the infrastructure this year. You should be getting involved in those conversations. So you need to know when your financial year is for that, but also sometimes, like I mentioned, if you have a really good year as a business, at the end of the year, they want to spend cash to lower the tax burden. So it's important to know that so that if you have big expenses coming up, you can be like, hey, I noticed in the company meeting, you said we've been having a pretty good year. Just checking to see if there's gonna, like, if we need to work on spending some cash now instead of next year, approach it in that term and you might get more than you expected to. If you do get them to order things, make sure you understand from a business side whether those things have to be ordered or received. Some businesses are fine if you just order things by December 31st. Some businesses have to actually physically receive it by December 31st. So if you go spend $150,000 to blow that end of your budget or end of your cash for the company to help lower the tax burden and also get you what you want, but it shows up January 4th, for some companies, that actually is a double whammy the wrong way because now they had that cash at the end of the year. That caused them to get taxed for it. They also didn't get the equipment till the next year. So now it's coming out of the next year when they don't have the cash. Yes, well, they have the cash, but it's not in the books the right way, so on and so forth. So make sure you understand the timing of your business and how your business wants to do budgeting. When you're budgeting, block out your must-have maintenance. So things that you're basically committed to. If you have a Microsoft SA with spread payments, you have to spend that money. You are legally bound to spend that for the 3 years you did your spread payments. There is no, we're not using it anymore. No, you're using it now. You're buying it one way or the other. Maybe your ERP maintenance. We have to pay this or they shut it off because it's in the cloud. Make those your essential things. We absolutely have to do this. Your run rate upgrades. So keep track of, okay, server's hitting 5 years, we should replace it. Firewall's hitting 5 years, it needs to be replaced. Windows Server 2016 goes end of life next year, so we need to get off that. Be tracking those run rate upgrades, but then also have new initiatives, what you want to do. Upgrade the ERP to the new version that has this built-in AI helper. Migrate QuickBooks from on-premise to online. Move to Teams and get rid of the physical phones. If you put stuff like this for the business people, those top 2 sections are that generic de-risking, boring insurance talk, where it's just like, oh God, they just want more money to keep things exactly how they are. But if you separate it out and talk about the new stuff you want to do that's going to improve the business and help things, that can really make people more interested in IT. It's like, oh, wait, we can get an AI helper in there? Oh, that could be really cool. Oh, wait, QuickBooks Online is actually cheaper than on-premise? I thought all cloud things were more expensive. Okay, what do we get from it? Oh, it makes it easier for non-accountants to understand. Oh, that's useful. So be prepared to explain your initiatives cleanly. Again, pre-think how you want to talk about these things because it's very easy in IT to start to explain it and then realize you don't have any way to simplify the terms or the concept to people on the fly. Like, okay, what's the SAN do? Well, it's like a filing cabinet where all your stuff goes. So figure out ahead of time how you're going to explain these different initiatives, and be prepared to explain what will save the company money. QuickBooks Online is cheaper than QuickBooks on-prem. Moving to Teams and getting rid of the physical phones. We're spending $5,000 a year on physical phones. We already have Teams licensing, so that's going to save that money. Things like that. Be prepared to have those conversations. And if you're moving from one thing to another, make sure you explain what it's offsetting from a cost standpoint, so that, again, the business understands that you're actually thinking about it from a business standpoint and helping them. Work with the business, create multi-year plans. Talk to what the business's plans are for the next couple of years, and can IT help with any of them? Sometimes business people think about something in terms of, okay, we're getting a new location, we're going to have to spend $100,000 for build out, but then we've got our little baby warehouse that we can work in, everything's fine. But if they don't talk to IT, when they tell IT, all of a sudden it's like, oh, we've got to get an internet connection there. We've got to get a firewall. We've got to get wireless access points. And we've got to get a lot of them because it's got to cover this whole place. We've got to get switches. We've got to get wiring to plug all that stuff in. It's like, I thought we were just adding another building. It's like, you are, but everything uses the computers now. So we've got to get all that in. How much will that cost? 150,000? It's like, the building only cost me 100. It's like, yeah, well, you didn't ask, so sorry. So try to figure out plans for what's going to happen, and can IT help? What IT is going to cost for them? Identify impacts of pushing things off and pulling things in. So again, being open and honest. Hey, if we put off this renewal for another year, we can go to year 7 on our hardware. But after year 7, there are no first-party updates, full stop. So we are completely exposed at that point. We can't get any replacement stuff. We can't do this. So next year, this will absolutely positively have to be a purchase, or we're going to be in a really bad state. Identify major expenses as early as possible and remind people. This is super important. Hey, this year, I don't think there's any major expenses, but in 2 years, we have to replace this. And it's probably going to be like $12,000. Hey, in 1 year, we need to replace the server. It's probably going to be $13,000 now because things have gone more expensive. But I don't think there's anything over this year. So that when you get to the year of, you can be like, hey, remember that server we've been talking about? It's time. We have to replace it. So that it's not coming as a surprise to the business. And make sure you actually have time to achieve what you're asking for. One of the major problems IT has is when they finally get these conversations going with the business about what they want to do and how they need to do it, then they don't have time to actually do it all. So then it's like, okay, we're going to replace those servers that you've been talking about. We're going to get that new fancy firewall that does the extra security. We're going to roll out EDR to protect us. And we also want to roll out that new version of our ERP to get the AI stuff. Oh crap, when am I going to finish all this? How am I going to get all this done? So make sure you don't over commit yourself, because then they're never going to give you money again. It's like, well, we gave you all that money last year. You didn't do anything with it. So make sure that you're keeping all of this in an achievable standpoint, just in case they actually go, yeah, buy it all. We're good. So your key takeaways: treat each other like humans. That can be very hard to do with IT people because there's a lot of stereotypes for a reason about little gremlins you lock in the closet. But try to treat them like humans. They do appreciate it. Give advance notice of needs both directions. If you think you're building a new plant this year, let IT know as soon as possible so they can help with the actual IT needs. If you're going to buy a company, let them know so that they can help understand what the costs of bringing them in might be and help you understand it. From IT, talk about how you'll enable the business, not just about how you'll remove risks, but how you're actually going to help the business succeed. From business, talk about what business needs from IT in specifics, not always just generics about we want AI. Both sides, try to keep the discussion somewhat high level and minimize jargon. Other people get as confused in the revenue COGS, GM, net income discussion as people get with the IT discussions with all their acronyms. Build multi-year plans together, both sides working together for IT, so that you can lay out those expenses. I guarantee somebody somewhere is dealing with the accounting side that put that CNC in there for 10 years depreciation and put IT in for depreciation. If everybody works together, that can tie up and have a plan where everybody's on the same page and know what's happening. And then one of the big things is try to communicate freely back and forth, as opposed to, okay, well, it's budget time, so I'm gonna have to talk to people for that one meeting every year that I hate so much. Talk more frequently in smaller times to try to like stay on the same page, build a rapport so that you actually know how to get in touch with each other, know who's responsible for things, so that everything's not a one-off chaotic conversation when the time comes. And that's it for what I had in this. If anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to post them and we can address them.
Great. Thanks, Brent. We actually do have a question. This actually goes back to your slide about operating and capital expense and depreciation. And the question was, is it like buying a new car versus what you'd sell it for used in a year or two? Is that a good comparison?
Yeah, so like if you lease a car, that's an operating expense, or lease a truck. If you're a business, you probably lease your entire fleet of vehicles that you're using for everything. And the main reason is you're going to beat the crap out of them and they're not going to be worth anything in a couple years. So they're going to be somebody else's thing. You're going to use them as soon as they break. You just stop that part of the lease. You don't have to worry about it anymore. If you buy all those trucks that you're rolling out there, when people beat the crap out of them and destroy them, well, now you're on the hook for fixing them and figuring it out and everything. But it's your asset. You're not paying every month on it, but at some point you've got to do maintenance on it and all those other things. So it's kind of a very similar type of thing where you're just balancing when and how the money comes out.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame that. Another question is your framing of IT as a business enabler is really great. Since you have been doing this, what do you feel like is the biggest mistake when it comes to budgeting that you have seen between IT and the business entity? Is there one that really stands out to you that you see a common mistake or a common theme that you see more than anything else?
Yeah, the number one thing really is IT becomes like an insurance company where every single time they're going for money, it's just, we need money so something bad doesn't happen. We need money for something bad doesn't happen. And when IT is already an expense, and then every year the expense just keeps growing, and no one's ever framing the good stuff that's happening. No one's talking about like, hey, we got Teams implemented last year and everybody really likes it. And I've heard that communication's flowing really well now, and we don't have so many big all employee email chains and all that. But we can make it better if we implement the Teams voice section and we integrate that so that people don't have their phone system on their desk, but then also Teams over here. We can get all that together versus just being like, okay, well, we need a new server in case it dies. We need to upgrade our support in case something dies. We need to get the better security in case somebody bad tries to get in. Like it's two different ways of approaching stuff. Like all businesses have their run rate expenses, but IT falls in a trap of only talking about the run rate expenses instead of talking about the new cool stuff they could be doing for the company. And if you do that well, the run rate expenses just kind of go, okay, yeah, they're in the budget, whatever, we don't care. But we want to focus on these cool things you're talking about.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, thank you for that, Brent. Well, with that, it looks like we have covered all the questions. So I will close us out. I want to thank everyone again for attending today's webinar. We certainly hope that you learned more about how to talk tech, talk business, and talk budget. So Brent, thank you for covering this and walking us through this in a very comprehensive and very clear way. Again, this webinar will be uploaded to YouTube. So if you know someone that would benefit from hearing this and really learning about budgeting and talking about IT as a business enabler, please feel free to share this link with them. We'll make sure to push this out on our social media channels as well. And then just to wrap us up a little bit about Mirazon, for those that may not be familiar, our goal is really to utilize technology to elevate business, much like Brent said. Our core services include managed IT services, cybersecurity, and IT consulting. And so we'd ask that you please stay tuned for more webinars that will be coming up. And if your company needs help with IT planning, IT budgeting, or really strategic recommendations, our team would be happy to have those conversations. So you can reach out to us at info@mirazon.com or visit our website, mirazon.com. So with that, thank you again, Brent. And this webinar is officially complete. Thank you to all of our attendees, and we hope everyone has a great afternoon. Thank you.